knowing that, half of our revenue was from our readers. So that
So that was the balance, really, roughly half from subscription.
like that. Sometimes it was a little more, sometimes a little less. But now that's a trade publication. The Economist, which has tremendous reader circulation revenue, doesn't have that. But so a trade publication will always have.
We'll have a higher amount of subscription revenue.
So, for example, when I did this story about how this firm called Finley Cumble, remember them?
Of course.
Was a Ponzi scheme, and I got how they had whited out the numbers for some of their partners literally whited out stuff on the P&L. I had the real P&L, and the managing partner showed me the other P&L, and you could see the whiteout. I mean, it wasn't like just it wasn't figuratively whited out. It was literally whited out. But anyway, so we did this story. It said there's a Ponzi scheme. It's going to go bankrupt. It went bankrupt. We lost. They had a group subscription to the American Lawyer, so we lost 400 partner subscriptions. But that's all we lost out of that.
Okay.
That's the only time a story ever lost circulation revenue.
Oh, interesting.
Advertising, we did a story when we were first starting the magazine, 1 or 2 years into it. We had we had nothing. We had no revenue of any kind. We had $400,000 of advertising revenue, and Westlaw was responsible for $180,000 of it.
Okay.
And I decided one day, or someone did, and I thought it was we should do a story about Westlaw. No one had ever written a story about Westlaw. Mm-hmm. And this was these were the days when Westlaw had this monopoly, almost, on law books, on judicial decisions. And no one had ever written a story about this obscure, very rich firm in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. So Jill Abramson and Ellen Pollack were assigned to do the story. And they do the natural thing. First, they call the CEO of Westlaw, a guy named Opperman, and he calls me. He's very polite. He says, "Mr. Brill, you have 2 reporters who proposed to do a story on Westlaw." I said, "Well, no, actually, they're doing a story on Westlaw." I said, "I don't know if it's going to be positive or negative." And the story, by the way, turned out to be more positive than negative.
Okay.
He said, "I just want to tell you, we don't allow people to write about us." And I did my usual First Amendment shtick. And then he said, "I will tell you this. If you write anything about us, positive or negative, it doesn't matter, we will never advertise in your publication again."
Oh, wow.
I said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that." I never told Jill and Ellen about it. We wrote this, we did the story, and the guy kept his word. He never advertised. We lost almost half of our ad revenue with one story. But I knew I had that circulation. Well, I also knew that I didn't start a magazine, so I'd have some guy from Minneapolis call and tell me to kill a story.
So you were willing to make that decision?
Oh, we did. No, we did. And he kept his word. And he finally relented probably 10 years later, by which time we owned Legal Times and the Texas Lawyer.
Ah, yes, exactly. But that's an interesting question. When you said, well, I didn't start this publication so that someone could be telling me what to cover, what not to cover. Yeah. That seems to strike at sort of the essential tension in journalism. I mean, to what extent is this a business, or is this really perhaps not a business, but something we do because we enjoy it, or because it serves the public?
Well, listen, a lot of people do a lot of businesses because they enjoy it, but it also is a self-sustaining and sometimes even thriving business. But it comes back to my point: if your real bosses are your readers, and your readers, it's not just one reader, it's not just the guy at Finley Cumble, it's a whole bunch of readers, then you're not beholden to anyone in particular, and you can be independent without being some kind of martyr. And that's why I always liked having readers be my bosses. And I just think there's something, when I'm visiting all these newspapers now and talking about journalism online, the fact that this online part of their business is totally beholden to advertisers and not readers, it just changes the feel of a newsroom, because as soon as you tell the people in the newsroom, you're actually going to start to charge for the stuff that's online. And therefore, your job is not to just throw everything up there, but figure out stuff that's really distinctive and special, that makes you special. I mean, you're never going to get people to pay for finding out that, the Yankees lost to the Angels last night. But you are going to get people to pay for stuff that is distinctive about your brand.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the problem with advertiser-funded journalism is really there are no barriers to entry. In terms of the subscription stuff, isn't it possible for some site to, crop up against a site that does charge for its online product and as it's entitled to do, under the copyright laws, under fair use, sort of take the juiciest parts, sort of a Huffington Post, or, I mean, everyone does aggregation, and if they're going to do it for free...
I'm not so sure that some of what the Huffington Post does, they're entitled to do.
Ah, okay.
I'm not so sure you can make a business out of, rewriting somebody's story. But even if you can, again, our premise is that the 10% of the people who go to the Denver Post will find, or the New York Times, will find enough that's distinctive about it that they go to it all the time. And those are the only people you're going to ask to charge. I mean, you wouldn't, under my model, ask my daughter to charge unless she visited the site, let's say, more than 15 times in a month. And I suspect in your case, you have a lot of people who are just addicted to that thing, who are there every day. And those are, I mean, if they've made it a habit, then you, after a month or two of sort of preparing them for it, if you can ease them into the notion that they're paying a little bit for it, you have a shot. But if not, I think, journalism that takes resources is in a lot of trouble. Now, you could have a site that just, takes and plants, and posts, everybody's rumors from every law firm. My notion of journalism is that your obligation is, you can take that stuff, whether it comes in online or whether it's, someone calling, Jim Stewart, when he started at the American Lawyer, calling him from his old firm and saying, hey, this is going on. His job is to check that out.
Yes.
Now, you can post it and then check it out too, but, I mean, that's your own decision. But you've got to have people who get paid to do that work because they have to pay the rent and feed their kids too.
That's true, and we do. We have a number of full-time employees, but there is the issue of scale. Do you need 3 people, which is basically what Above the Law has in terms of full-time or a full-time equivalence, or do you need 100?
You're doing. No, it depends. I'm not saying you need more than 3 people, but what I'm saying is to have those 3 people or 4 people or 5 people long-term, you're best off solidifying it by establishing that this has value, that it's not free. It just changes the whole nature of the beast.
I remember there was a quote, maybe you can tell me who said it, who said something like, people don't respect what they can get for free. I came across it recently, and it made me think a lot about online journalism.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all, the New York Times has now trained my kids that it's free. And the only way they have to pay for it is if they get it in the form that is their second favorite form, which is the paper. They have to go somewhere to get the paper. The paper's not updated instantly. The paper doesn't have any video. I mean, New York Times is a fabulous website. It's got all this stuff. It's constantly updated, and it's a better product than the paper. So they do the only natural, intelligent thing. They charge for the inferior product and give the better product away for free.
Oh, you're talking about Times Select? Where the,
no, I'm talking about the New York Times right now.
What are your thoughts on
they
Times
charge
Select?
$2. Times Select, first of all, economically, it probably worked. But the writers didn't like being left out of the conversation.
Yeah, Maureen Dow, Tom Friedman, etc.
Now I think they'd have a different view since they're probably a lot more focused on working in a economically viable place.
Sure.
But the one thing that our research tells us is you don't charge for, or you don't start charging for, are the opinion pages.
Yeah.
Because
it's the reported news. That's what's resource intensive. Anyone can have an opinion.
Now, at the Times, you might say, well, certain kind of coverage is not terribly distinctive or any different from a lot of other places, but other kinds of coverage is. And just the same as if you're the local newspaper, in Des Moines, Iowa, you may be the only paper that's covering City Hall and the zoning board and the local, sports teams in the high school and college, and people want to read that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
It's good to meet you.